After one of their most successful chapters ever, introducing Resident Evil into Dead by Daylight and Nemesis alongside Jill and Leon, Dead by Daylight figured, why not do it again and bring the community another Resident Evil chapter, and let's see how it goes. With some early leaks forcing their hands in the anniversary stream, they quickly announced that Project W was coming into the fog. The hype could not be contained and everybody was losing their minds over Wesker joining the fog. In no time, the Wesker chapter was in full swing and people were enjoying it everywhere, having another taste of Resident Evil in Dead by Daylight, and a Killers Who Power seemed super fun just tossing survivors around. There was a very small minority that weren't too happy with this chapter, as they figured, why are we getting another Resident Evil chapter? And on top of that, why do we have another infection-based killer that's so similar to what we already received? But it was so much positive for this chapter that it heavily outweighed those opinions and thoughts. So where did this all go wrong? Why do people now hate Wesker? What was the big switch, and how can we fix this moving forward? Let's go ahead and talk about it. Kings and queens, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm your host, The King, and welcome to Why People Hate Wesker. Let's jump on in and dive into everything. As explained, and you're familiar with the timeline, on August 30th, Wesker was introduced into the fog, and people really enjoyed this chapter. There were thousands of clips going around of people finding out new things, enjoying the voice lines that Wesker had to offer, seeing the new characters in Ada and Rebecca, and really resonating with the Dead by Daylight X Resident Evil chapter for the second time around. Numbers reflected this, and sales were going through the roof for all the success that it had generated for the companies. Now, after a few months of everybody tossing survivors around and hearing the voice lines for quite a while, people started to poke a little bit of flaws in Wesker, and this is what started pretty much the train of hate to start. And hate is such a strong word, it's just more of a dislike at this point in time. The number one thing that people noticed was that the hitbox was a little bit crazy, and Dead by Daylight knew about this issue as well. We had changes made to him where the hitbox was reduced and then increased, and then they felt comfortable in a nice middle ground that people still weren't too happy with. At first, you would be completely around a corner, and based on latency and ping and just a larger hitbox, unfortunately, you would get grabbed from some crazy angles, and there's tons of clips of people showcasing this. Now, some of them can be reduced to ping, as I said, while others can really just be the hitbox. Dead by Daylight acknowledged this and made the hitbox a lot smaller. However, during this time, it was a little bit too drastic of a change, so you could be literally brushing by a survivor and you wouldn't hit them. Now, this didn't feel good on the other side, so Dead by Daylight kind of found a middle ground and they left it there. So obviously, on both sides of the spectrum, people weren't fully satisfied, thus giving that initial hate. So times continued, and as we received chapters after Wesker, it was pretty evident that the chapters just weren't that good. Now, this is a whole argument in itself, and people can debate this all they want, but comparing just strict numbers on how much the community has played Project W in August of 2022 and a few months after that, comparing to the next chapters that we received, it's very evident that there were much more players resonating with that chapter than they did with any other chapter that we received in the future from that point on. We had a peak of about 70,000 players during August of 2022, and the only time we were able to pass that was in this month for the anniversary chapter itself. So it took almost a full year for us to get those peak amount of players. So people were quite interested in this, and that resonated with those players quite a lot. With chapters like the Knight and the Skull Merchant coming out, people didn't really seem to care much about them and resonated more with the sweet talking Wesker that we got, the guy that makes the game fun for the killer, giving you voice lines, a fun mechanic to throw survivors around. people just seem to continue to play him because they really enjoyed that power. We finally got a killer in DBD after such a long time that provided quite a good amount of fun for the killer side. And of course, as I said, survivors initially loved this too. They love hearing the voice lines. They love just seeing Wesker have even some unique dialogue with different characters, and being tossed around was quite fun as well. And then it got quite excessive. Wesker players flooded. I mean, Wesker was such a well-received chapter that killers just stuck around to playing Wesker. Not only did they get a fun killer, but they got a strong killer as well. And in the right hands, Wesker would be so deadly. Some of the add-ons made this exceptionally well, and it wasn't too map dependent as well. You could play Wesker on pretty much any map and still be quite successful with this. Thus, survivors found more and more and more Weskers in their lobby, and ultimately thinking this would eventually cool down and people would stop playing Wesker. Well, evidently, as we said before, the next two chapters just weren't it. So people continued to play Wesker and continued to play Wesker and continued to play Wesker to even this point in time. Now, with all of this going on, tempers seem to be flaring where people just straight up DC'd when they're getting Weskers. It reminded me a lot of old Legion, and comments on Twitter started pouring in about how much people disliked Wesker and how much they see him in the game. Now, if this wasn't evident enough for you, take a look at the most recent kill switch that we received for Wesker, where there was a bug for him that was very game-breaking. They managed to kill switch him for just 1 or 2 days, and half of the community members rejoiced and were so happy that they don't have to play against Wesker, while the other half were like, what the heck, why are we getting so much hate for just playing a killer that we really enjoy and really like? This seems quite unfair and targeted. So the divide was pretty evident, and this was after quite a long buildup of just back and forth between both sides of survivors, again seeing Wesker so much, having those weird hitboxes, and that's just the start of it. Another reason why a lot of these survivors really dislike Wesker is because a lot of them tunnel. And this isn't to just put a general coat over everything, but it's just more mechanically inclined to do so. For example, if you have Ouroboros, let's say you make it to full Ouroboros, Wesker decides to gun after you, boom, he gets you. Well, he puts you on a hook, bada bing, bada boom. Survivor comes and saves you. Guess what? You still have about half of your Ouroboros infection on you. So you have one of two choices. One, you either run to find a spray to spray yourself because the infection is already halfway, or two, you can sit by the hook and get healed by your friends. As you know, in a recent change, healing takes a lot longer than it used to be. And with most killers running Sloppy Butcher, etc., healing can be quite excessive. So by the time you get fully healed, you're already ready to go back into max Ouroboros. Once that happens, the Wesker knows where you're at. They're going to be coming for you. So you're either forced with the option of running around and injured to find a spray bottle to cure yourself, where Wesker could potentially see you and be like, hey, you're obviously injured, why would I not go for you? Or you're in a position where you're fully healed and now you are fully infected and the Wesker knows exactly where you're at. Now, some people take this to the next level where they just straight up tunnel the survivor that they're going for, and some people just use it the way that it's mechanically designed. And when you compare this to other killers like Freddy, who put you to sleep, and then when you're on hook, you're automatically awake, it's very questionable about why these mechanics are still in the game for a killer like Wesker. Giant Zia Fog Whisperer also pointed out quite a few other issues that Wesker has, one of those being exactly what we spoke about. He says that when unhooked, the survivor returns to 20 charges as if the survivor had already been infected by Wesker instead of 50 charges. As he highlights, this encourages killers to tunnel you, which can be incredibly frustrating for the other side. Another thing that he points out is to rework the video conference device add-on, which increases the passive infection by X amount of percentage when the survivor performs a repair, sabotage, or totem action. And the final problem that he pointed out was for the lab photo add-on, which makes Wesker far too binary in his gameplay, taking a lot of the fun out of it. His suggestion was that when Wesker uses his bond on a survivor, if the collision is on a pallet or a breakable door, the pallet/door shatters and puts the survivor directly into the dying state. When Wesker uses the bond on a survivor, if the collision is on a generator, the generator actually explodes and ends up reducing some of the progress. As it stands right now, you basically can destroy the pallets and breakable walls while colliding with this, but it removes your ability to vault the pallets itself, which obviously makes sense. So to recap everything in a quick little summary, 1, we have the very awkward collisions that you might see that can be initially frustrating. 2, we have add-ons in the game that just really should be reworked and looked at and maybe changed so it feels more fair on the other side. 3, it is super easy and encouraged mechanically for Wesker to tunnel survivors and put survivors at such a disadvantage when they're unhooked and they're already infected, because it puts you in a position where you either need to run to get the spray to remove the infection, leaving yourself vulnerable, or take the heals and then get max infection, putting you in another bad position right away. And 4, it's the excessive amount of Weskers that we're seeing in the game. And again, this isn't the fault of the players playing Wesker, so that's why the community has slowly started to hate Wesker and dislike seeing them in their games for one of those reasons. And all of them combined just makes it a little bit more irritating. And for the other side, people absolutely love Wesker for the reasons that I've stated. They love the nitty gameplay that he has. He's strong, he's fun, he has incredible voice lines, he has some pretty cool skins, and if you're a fan of Resident Evil, this is a slam dunk for you. So you pretty much have everything going for you if you are playing Wesker. Not to mention, for balance-wise, he's not map dependent, so you can play him on any other map, unlike other killers in the game, and there's nothing new that has enticed any killer mains to play anybody else, because the chapters that proceeded after Wesker were admittingly a bit more lackluster. So everybody kind of stuck around with Wesker, and that's where we're at. And it was so evident when this killer was kill switched and everybody realized, hey, we are at a crossroads here where some people really love Wesker and some people really hate Wesker. So how do we move past this? How do we fix this? What are the necessary steps to take? I've seen some folk talking about if there was a killer prevention similar to map prevention, the repeat prevention where you don't get the same map, what if they did that for killer? And initially I thought this was a fantastic idea as well, until I realized how difficult that will be. First of all, there are just so many variables that goes into it. Think about your regular matchmaking. If you're playing as a survivor, the game find survivors in your local area, so your ping is pretty good. It all connects to one server that's local to you. On top of that, they also need to find survivors that have similar MMR to you. Once you've done that, you have to find a killer in that same region and that same MMR. Now from the killers, because of balancing, you're more likely to see some of the stronger killers and more of the popular killers rather than the other ones. So you're likely to see nurses, spirits, Weskers, etc. So the pool for all the other killers are already pretty low, putting your chances of finding a different type of killer way lower than a 1 in 30 plus chance. Will be changed to about 1 in 12 just because half of those killers are realistically not being played, and the chances that they are also being played and in your region and MMR is even more unlikely. Now, to top that off, you also have to add in the next variable, which would be not to get the same killer in a row, which if you already, let's say, had a 1 in 10 chance, that's going to knock you down even more. So that means if you were to look for a game with these new rules, you're probably going to have queue times that are hours long. You're not going to be able to find games unless they're games that are incredibly laggy or not balanced in MMR. You're going to be getting brand new killers or survivors, unfortunately. Now, you may even argue that this is better than seeing the same killer every single time, but to each your own. I don't think this is something that they'll do in the future. The best course of action is to fix the few things that we mentioned. Number 1 is to make it so that when you're unhooked from the hook and you're already infected, that your infection just restarts. That would immediately relieve so much pressure and basically make it so Weskers aren't inclined to tunnel and survivors can actually have a fighting chance against them. Number 2 is to nerf a few of those really strong add-ons. You need to make it so that people aren't necessarily relying on those add-ons, but more skillful gameplay. And by doing that, you might even see a decrease in Wesker players, because those people that really did rely on the add-ons and not actually understand the fundamentals of the killers will not play them anymore. We kind of seen this effect with the Nurse and the Spirit, where they nerfed some of their really strong add-ons and tons of people decided not to play them anymore, when these killers are still super good if you truly understand how to play them and even use some of the regular add-ons that help them out so much more than game-breaking, overpoweredly strong add-ons. And that's about it. That's the black and white of how we can fix Wesker and slowly iron out the problems that both sides of the community are facing. I feel like this wouldn't be too bad on the killer side, as you'll still have a fun, witty, and strong killer to use, but you're not going to be super duper oppressive to the point where it seems unfair to the survivor side. And this is coming from a killer main. I'm a killer main. I play Wesker myself as well, so don't take this any type of way saying that I'm, adhering to the survivor crowd, etc. Because again, if you know how to truly play Wesker, you wouldn't need to rely on these tactics, and it will slowly start to iron out the unfun parts of this killer and just highlight the fun parts that people initially saw when they first received the character. Wesker is a fantastic killer in the game. He's super strong, he is charismatic, he has funny voice lines, he has fantastic skins, and he just feels at home in the fog. And I want to see everybody love Wesker, because I enjoy playing Wesker. In the many games that I have played against Wesker, it has been fun, but again, after a while, it does get quite boring. Nonetheless, hopefully we can find a healthy middle ground moving forward, and I hope that answers the question on why the community hates Wesker. I've been your host, The King. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe for some more awesome Dead by Daylight content, and make sure you guys are coming out to Twitch. This week, we are having tons of things planned. Tomorrow, we're wearing a maid outfit. We're doing an anime girl outfit. We're going to be eating the world's hottest gum, and then we're going to be celebrating our partner anniversary of being a Twitch partner on Thursday. So hopefully we see you guys on those streams. But that's gonna do it for me. As always, I'm The King. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.